Hello, and welcome to Leadership as a Philosophy, Not a Checklist, video discussion 15. This is going to be on the movie, or the documentary, Enron, the smartest guys in the room. Now, different than the first year, because now we're a couple videos into the second year of plan. Instead of basically using this to demonstrate how amazing somebody's leadership is, it's really just to identify so that you can see what terrible leadership looks like. So if you happen to be in an organization where everything's falling apart and everything seems like it's crazy, the environment's toxic, there's backstabbing, it's crappy leadership. So we're going to show you how to identify crappy leadership. The tone will seem negative, but I'm going to find some examples where there's great leadership. It's just hard to get those people to talk because they don't think they're great, which is part of it, right? They have a lot of humility, so they don't want to talk about what they do that's so amazing because they don't think they're doing anything amazing. Correct? Okay. So for those of you that don't know, the whole thing that happened with Enron, well, I'll just go through the thing. Go watch the documentary. It's available on Amazon Prime, I believe. It's available on a couple of streaming services, but they kind of take it down a lot. So, try to get a copy of it. But it was basically a big energy trading company that rose to prominence and then fell apart by cheating. All right, so we'll go right into the summary of the movie. All right, so concepts. So the only goal for the company was to make the stock price go up. And they did it a bunch of different ways, right? They lied to Wall Street. They had a bunch of financial models that were all obscure and bookkeeping that was all weird. And they would release their annual numbers without a financial statement to back it up so people could analyze and make sure they weren't cheating. They would also go to company meetings and tell everybody to invest every penny of their 401k and any other thing to buy lots of stock. So that made the stock price go up. But behind the scenes, they were doing all these dumb deals that were falling apart and they're losing millions and, in fact, billions of dollars. But the number one goal was to inflate the stock price. If you watch the documentary, it talks about they had the stock price in the elevators. They had the stock price in the bathroom. The stock price was all over the place, and that's all anybody focused on. So it was just get a number. It's kind of a recurring theme. I'm doing a couple of videos right now where the number is the number one thing. That's the priority. Go get it. Nobody talks about people. Nobody talks about employee experience. It's number. All right. So whoops. How did I do that? When you're your own producer and you make mistakes, you can't point the finger at anybody else. All right. So was the character of the company terrible? Did they have humility? No. Did they have integrity? No. They lied all the time. Did they have empathy? No. Especially no empathy. If you go and watch it, it's cutthroat. It's backstabbing. It's, if somebody has to stomp on somebody else's neck to get ahead, they were going to stomp on somebody else's neck to get ahead. A bunch of the CEOs were doing a bunch of lying and shady deals and just no control whatsoever. So how did that work? Okay, you had corruption at just about every level because there's all this money flowing around. Because you didn't have any integrity, you didn't have any humility, and you weren't paying attention to stuff, or they were paying attention and just ignoring it. The accounting firm that they hired that was getting all these bonuses and all this money, they lied and certified stuff as being correct. The investment banks that were giving money to Enron were part of the problem. They were donating a bunch of, not donating, but giving a bunch of weird loans and doing a bunch of crazy bookkeeping stuff because they had a bunch of stock and they were getting a whole bunch of money. Okay? So just because you have a system, we talk about systems all the time. Just because you have a system, the system has people in it, and those people can be corrupted. So you got to check the systems. Anyway, there was corruption at every level. So it's Arthur Andersen was an accounting firm that was doing this, and all the big investment banks. Now this happened in 2001, 2002. All the big investment banks who were involved in this were also involved in the financial crisis 7 or 8 years later. Why? Because they got away with this one too. Well, mostly. They all went and lied. Anyway, so we talk about this a lot. This is the culture issue. The leadership is in charge of creating a culture. Well, the chairman of the board was Kenneth Lay, and then the CEO was, I just forgot his name, Jeffrey Skilling. I just forgot his name. Yeah, Jeffrey Skilling, sorry. And he was the boss. His thing was, if you made money, you got promoted. If you made big stuff, you got promoted. If you lied and cheated, he didn't care. He just wanted the number. Well, what happens if you get a bunch of people that are numbers based and only promote the people that are numbers based, that don't have any integrity, that don't have any morals, don't have any good character? Well, then you end up with corruption and a terrible culture of lying. Well, then what happens? If you're only promoting the people that lie to get ahead and do all this stuff to, cheat basically, well, then you got to cheat more to beat the guy that's cheating. So if you're rewarding bad behavior and rewarding lying and rewarding cheating, that's what you're going to have all around you. Great example, they talk about a call where somebody asked him a question, said, you're the only company that has these rate of gains, and every time you give us a financial report or your numbers for the quarter, you don't give us a financial statement so that we can review it. And they got mad and started yelling at the person asking the question. Well, that should have sent red flags all over the place. Anyway, like I said, if you don't have any character, then you get vile people. People will do the example, and this is my next little thing. So they talk about the Milgram Experiment. And for those of you that don't know it, you can go look it up. This guy wanted to prove, or wanted to see, he didn't want to prove, he wanted to see what would happen, what people would do if somebody in authority was telling them that it was okay. So it's a famous example. People are sitting at this thing with a bunch of switches that's got a bunch of electricity. There's a curtain, and on the other side is a person that's being asked questions. And every time they get a question wrong, the person gives them a jolt of electricity. Well, for each question they get wrong, you give them more and more electricity. And the person on the other side of the curtain, every time they would get the shock, would scream. Now, what they didn't know is the person on the other side of the scream, I think they just had a light board, so they would see that the current had come through, and then they would scream like they had been shocked. Well, 50% of the people gave a deadly dose of electricity because the scientists, they had some qualms and said, okay, are you sure? I have your authority. This is your responsibility if this person gets hurt anymore. And the scientist said, yeah, go ahead and do it. 50% of the people gave a deadly dose of electricity, and the person on the other side pretended like they were dead. So what does that tell you when it comes to leadership? And this is the most important point to me about the whole stinking thing with Enron, because it's human nature. If you have a culture that allows terrible things to happen, people are going to do it because somebody else has created the environment. Somebody else is doing it while they're doing it. So why do I have to worry about it? As long as this person says, hey, I'll take the blame, people will do terrible things. Go look at several of the things that happened in the 20th century where people did terrible stuff because the boss told them to. Now, the good news is that half of the people in this experiment said no and wouldn't do it. They may have done a few of the shocks at the beginning, but once it got where it was really bad, they said, no, we're done. I'm not doing it anymore, because they had some morals. So what does that tell you? I mean, I love the fact that it's 50%. So the line between good and evil goes through every human's heart. And so if you have a good environment that rewards good and rewards the right actions and the right activity, you're going to attract more of those people. And then your company has a good reputation and the culture has a good reputation. and the environment is great, then people feel healthy, and everything about it becomes good because you're rewarding and attracting good behavior and good actions and focus on people and whatever it is. But if you focus on evil and you focus on terrible things and you focus on that, you're going to attract more of those people. And then you're going to have a bunch of people that are a hive mind that think it's okay to do the wrong thing. That's human nature. And so this is why we talk about character in leaders. The 4 essential characteristics, the 4 pillars of your character: humility, integrity, empathy, and vigilance. And so if you've got somebody that's crooked, you got to get rid of them because it's not worth it. It's never worth it. But yeah, the Milgram experiment is crazy. But just think about that. Think about that when you're a leader. If you cut corners, if you lie, well, people are going to go, well, they lied, I can lie. It's the first thing they do. So that's how important it is for leadership. That's how important it is for a leader to do the right thing and be the right example. And, take their licks for things that go wrong. All right, so now we're going to do leadership evaluation on the company, but it's a result of some individuals. What did I do? Oh, yeah. So I already said this. Well, they talk about the fact that the people at Enron that had a conscience were starting to feel sick. They were dreading going into work because they had to lie and lie more. But there were people that were thriving on it. There were people that were loving it. There was one guy that he wasn't embezzling, but he was doing a bunch of crazy, weird trades and left with $250 million and just bailed. Right? And left all these organizations hanging, and everything started to fall apart, and they all lost tons of money. But because he had lied so much, it had fed the machine. And so as he left and all these things were found to be unprofitable, they had to lie to cover up this person's lies. So then people start feeling sick. People know what's going on. Now, the people that have no conscience, the people that have no character, don't care. They're fine. They're thriving. All right, so as we talked about, leadership evaluation. So integrity, lies, I just said that. Lies to cover lies, to cover lies, to cover lies. I can't remember, it's Abraham Lincoln or Mark Twain. I'd much rather tell the truth because then I don't have to remember anything else. But if you're doing a bunch of lying, they had one of their accountants, the CFO, started making a bunch of shell corporations and was trading money to these shell corporations every time they went to report their quarterly numbers. So their numbers looked good, but the debt was still out there. It was all still lies. And that's the reason they weren't submitting financial statements, because everybody started to realize that these companies didn't exist. They were just made up on paper. We just made stuff up. So no integrity, right? They didn't have any integrity. And the best part is that all the time, I keep forgetting what it is. It's not a narcissist. It's not pathological. It's somebody who lies even more, or knows absolutely the truth and tells a lie anyway. I don't know what you call that. Maybe they're just pathological liar. But anyway, they would just go out and talk about, we have integrity and we have this, and they have all these ads talking about how amazing they are, and it was all fake. It was all fake. Humility, none. They had all this hubris, had all this smugness. They ended up, there's this big fiasco they were involved in where they started trading electricity and basically started shutting down California, because California gets a bunch of their energy from outside because they have dumb environmental laws, so they can't generate enough of their own electricity. They were calling power plants up to shut the power down. I was living in California when this happened. They were shutting down power plants so that there was less supply, so that they could charge extra prices. So next thing you know, they're charging, instead of, I think it was the regular price was $20 or $30 a kilowatt hour, and they were charging $1,000. And they were just doing all this stuff. So next thing you know, there's billions of dollars that California's having to pay for electricity because these guys are manipulating the market. And they were laughing about it on the phone. They're talking to each other. Oh, this is great. Well, it was the middle of summer. Old people are dying. People are freaking out because it's 100 and whatever degrees and you can't run your AC because there's rolling blackouts because these jackwagons are goofing around with power just to make money. Why? Well, because there's no humility. You got to make your money. If your job is to make billions of dollars, and it was 4 or 5 traders, so these guys are getting huge bonuses, making a bunch of money for Enron. They're in the glowing whatever. So they didn't have any humility. Empathy, just talked about that. They didn't care about anything but dollar. Nothing. Didn't care about the people. Didn't care about the suffering they were caused. Didn't care about the employees that had some character. Right? So no empathy. Vigilance. Well, the vigilance one's interesting because I think if you go and watch the video and do some reading afterwards, that these guys knew what was going on. Absolutely knew what was going on and just lied. Or they believe their own lies. They just believe their own story, which I don't buy. These guys are all too smart and they were doing so much stuff they had to know what they were doing. So there you go. So now the question is, which is I think my next point. Yeah, so the leadership talent, I think if we look at the definition, right, so the ability to attune competence and environmental hierarchies in pursuit of a goal, I believe that Skilling had the leadership ability, but he didn't have any character. So that's why he's able to find out, hey, if I get some greedy people, my goal is to make the stock price go up. I'm going to reward and promote and push everybody that's going to make the stock price go up. Don't care about anything else. So the talent was there. But then, even after all this stuff, he's in the trial and he's lying because he basically just up and quit and cashed in a bunch of his stock. All the big CEOs started cashing in all their stock and froze out the employees when things started to fall apart. So did he have the talent? So this is a great example. Somebody that's got the leadership talent, but not the good characteristics, not the 4 essential characteristics, 4 pillars, whatever you want to call it. Didn't have any of that. Turns out he was big, self-doubter and all these sort of things. Ended up going to jail. And now Kenneth Lay, I don't know. Watching him and listening to him, it seemed like he was happy to have somebody that was doing his work for him. So I don't know that he had the talent, but he certainly didn't have any empathy or integrity. I mean, when everything started to fall apart, let's see if I had my summary. I can't remember. Yeah. So when everything started to fall apart, basically there was a few reports, they went from having this huge stock price to 27 days later being bankrupt. So Kenneth Lay is out here complaining because he had $300 million worth of stock, and when he finally sold it and got some money for it, it was only $20 million. He's talking about his suffering. Well, the problem is that there was a whole bunch of companies that they went and convinced to put their 401k in just Enron stock. And so there were $2 billion worth of retirement savings lost. And then a bunch of people the people at Enron that went and bought all of this Enron stock, well, they couldn't sell it until it was worth a quarter. Not a quarter of the value, 25 cents or something. So they lost $1 billion. So there's these people that were listening to the lies back here. Famous, watch the documentary, because there's these famous clips where somebody says, should we buy all this Enron stock? Absolutely. Meanwhile, these people are unloading it and doing all this other sort of stuff. And then there was a bunch of schemes that they were doing where they'd lie and get the price up and then sell, the CEOs would sell big chunks of their stock. It's pump and dump, all that sort of thing, which was made illegal in the Wolf of Wall Street. We don't need to go into that. And so if you look at it, this is a great example. Somebody who had the leadership ability, the leadership talent, but no character, or all of the negative character traits. So willful ignorance, no empathy, narcissism, and lying. Yeah, and I remember vaguely paying attention to it because I was busy doing other stuff when this thing happened. But what's the deal, right? I'm going to do another video on another company that was focused on the numbers so much that they ignored their people too and screwed everybody over. So is this really what we want from our quote unquote leaders? Hey, look, I made billions of dollars. Yeah, okay, well, people are miserable. One of the guys that was on the board, or one of the vice presidents of Enron, committed suicide because it finally got to him. And he knew that all the lies were going on, and he was in a position where I don't understand. I don't understand. If you're one of these vice presidents and you're worth millions of dollars, why don't you just tell the truth? Or he was so pressured not to tell the truth that this is what happened. It's terrible. It's terrible. It's all terrible. Terrible, terrible, terrible. Anyway, just a great example of leadership. Now you can go and read. There's all sorts of lascivious and crazy allegations and all this sort of stuff. Not worth getting into because they didn't have the character, might have had the talent, but the result of not having this character was corruption, lying, terrible people that were focused on numbers, which made people sick. It's all an example. All this stuff that we've talked about on all the previous things, this is a perfect example of it. You go watch it, oh, good grief, that's everything that we've been talking about. So why do we accept it? Why do we accept that? Anyway, all right, so there you go. It's a documentary. And as I said, it's available in a couple of different places. I guess if you look at IMDb, it'll show you where to get it, but it seems like it pops up on different streaming services at different times, and then other times it's not. But what does bug me about it, knowing what we know now, because if you go back and watch the one I did on The Big Short, a whole bunch of these congressmen and senators that were there asking these questions and yelling and screaming were the same ones that let the financial crisis happen. They were all still there. Well, not all. A bunch of them were still there. They didn't care. They didn't care about this. As long as they're making money, they don't care either. So that's that. I know it's kind of a short one, but as I talked about before, I wrote this plan April, May, and just thought this was going to be a good one to do because if you have the chance to watch it, you can find it if you have streaming services for sure. But if you go and find it and watch it, and after you've watched all these other videos, you'll go, oh yeah, I see exactly what he's talking about. So why do we accept it? We can't accept it. We got to pay attention. And especially when it comes to financial institutions, if it's too good to be true, it's a lie. Somebody's cheating. Alrighty. Well, that was this one. Kind of short. Like I said, I normally go longer. Maybe you're happy with that. And I hope you all have a great day.
Yeah.